Modern medicine is a miracle. It has saved billions of lives, eradicated diseases, and eased unimaginable suffering. But this temple of healing was built on a dark and secret foundation. A foundation of pain, of exploitation, and of bodies that were not considered human. This is not a story about a single rogue doctor. This is the story of a system that turned plantations into laboratories and human beings into test subjects. A system that justified torture in the name of progress. This is the story of the medical experiments performed on enslaved people. We will name the doctors who became famous, but more importantly, we will name the victims who were forgotten. We will uncover how the suffering of the enslaved built the careers of celebrated physicians and laid the groundwork for modern gynecology, surgery, and pharmacology. This is not just a dark chapter of history. It is a debt that has never been paid. Some stories are hard to hear, but they must be told. They must be remembered. If you believe that history, in all its darkness, must be confronted, then subscribe to Dark Chronicles and join our mission to ensure that no victim is ever truly forgotten. How is this possible? How could men who took an oath to do no harm inflict so much pain? The answer lies in the brutal logic of chattel slavery. In the eyes of the law, an enslaved person was not a human being. They were property, a commodity, an asset to be used, managed, and disposed of like livestock. This legal dehumanization was reinforced by a twisted, insidious pseudoscience, scientific racism. In the 18th and 19th centuries, white physicians and scientists, many of them educated at the world's top universities, published thousands of pages of research arguing that black people were biologically inferior. They claimed black people had thicker skulls, smaller brains, and a higher tolerance for pain. This last lie was the most convenient. Dr. Samuel Cartwright, a respected physician, wrote that black people's nerves were less sensitive than those of white people. This wasn't science. It was an alibi. It was the moral anesthesia that allowed doctors to cut into living human flesh without anesthetics and to call it medicine. This created the perfect storm. You had a population of millions of people with no rights, no voice, and no ability to consent. And you had a medical profession eager to make new discoveries, with no ethical oversight to stop them. The plantation was not just a farm. It was a laboratory, and the enslaved were the lab rats. His name is Dr. James Marion Sims. In medical schools, he is still called the father of modern gynecology. His statue stood in our most prominent public squares. He invented the speculum. He pioneered a surgery that has helped millions of women. But he built his legacy on the bodies of 3 enslaved women, Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy. Between 1845 and 1849, in a makeshift hospital in his backyard in Montgomery, Alabama, Sims set out to cure vesicovaginal fistula, or VVF. It's a horrific childbirth injury that leaves a woman incontinent. These women were outcasts, suffering in silence. Sims saw not a human tragedy but a scientific opportunity. Anarcha was just 17 when she endured a 3-day labor that ended in the death of her child and a severe fistula. She, along with Betsy and Lucy, became Sims's experimental subjects. For 4 years, he operated on them, again and again and again. He performed 30 surgeries on Anarcha alone, all of them without anesthesia. Sims wrote in his own autobiography that their agony was extreme. He described their screams and struggles, but he justified it with the racist belief that their pain was not the same as a white woman's. Other doctors were invited to watch the procedures, but the pain was so great they couldn't bear to look, so they left. And Sims continued, with other enslaved women forced to hold down the patient on the operating table. After 4 years and 30 surgeries, he finally perfected his technique on Anarcha. He had found the cure. He then moved to New York, opened a hospital, and began performing his now perfected surgery on wealthy white women. with anesthesia. He became rich, famous, a celebrated hero of medicine. Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy were forgotten. Their names were erased from the history he wrote. They were the mothers of gynecology, but their memory was buried. Until now. History is written by the victors. But we search for the stories of the silenced, the names erased from the textbooks. If you believe in uncovering these hidden histories, subscribe to Dark Chronicles. Help us give a voice to the voiceless. J. Marion Sims was not an outlier. He was the tip of a terrifying iceberg. Across the American South and the Caribbean, plantations were sites of constant, brutal medical experimentation. In Georgia, a plantation owner named Thomas Hamilton wanted to prove his racist theory that black people could withstand more heat. He forced an enslaved man named Fed into a pit, heated from below with a fire, to see how long he could endure it. He published his findings in a medical journal. In Virginia, Dr. Walter Jones studied heat stroke by forcing enslaved people to work in the sun without water, meticulously documenting their collapse. He called it research. When new vaccines were developed, they were often tested on the enslaved first. In 1721, during a smallpox outbreak in Boston, an enslaved man named Onesimus taught his enslaver, Cotton Mather, about the African practice of inoculation. Mather, celebrated as a hero, first tested the procedure on a group of enslaved people before recommending it to the white population. New drugs, especially toxic ones like mercury for syphilis, were tried on enslaved bodies. New surgical techniques were practiced on them. They were a living library of pathology, a collection of bodies to be explored, cut, and tested, all in the name of a science that saw them as less than human. For the enslaved, the terror did not end with death. In the 19th century, medical schools had an insatiable need for cadavers for anatomy classes, and the easiest source was the black graveyard. Across the South, a legend grew among the enslaved. The fear of the night doctors, men who would steal you from your bed or snatch your body from its grave to be cut up on the dissection table. This wasn't folklore, it was a reality. Medical schools, including the most prestigious in the nation, routinely purchased the bodies of enslaved people from enslavers, or more commonly, from grave robbers. The graves of white people were protected by law and by force. The graves of black people were not. The Medical College of Georgia was built near a black cemetery for this very reason. The bodies of the enslaved were treated as a natural resource, to be harvested for the education of white doctors. This practice reveals the ultimate dehumanization. Even in death, the black body was not allowed to rest. It was a commodity, a tool, a thing to be used and discarded. The final violation in a life defined by violation. Official history is full of heroes. But who were the villains? Who were the victims? We dig deeper. We challenge the official story. If you want to question everything you've been taught, subscribe to Dark Chronicles. The truth is often buried. This history is not in the past. It lives with us today. It lives in the deep, rational distrust that many Black Americans feel towards the medical establishment. When you know this history, the Tuskegee syphilis study, where Black men were left to die of syphilis for 40 years, from 1932 to 1972, just so doctors could study the disease, is not an aberration. It is a continuation. This legacy lives in the statistics. Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. Black patients are consistently undertreated for pain. These are not accidents. They are the echoes of a system built on the belief that black bodies are different, that black pain is not real. Out of these horrors, the field of modern bioethics was born. The Nuremberg Code, the Declaration of Helsinki, the concept of informed consent. All of these were created to ensure that human beings could never again be used as mere tools for science. They were created because of what happened to people like Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy. They were created because of the nameless bodies on the dissection tables. Modern medicine is a miracle, but it is a miracle stained with blood. The knowledge that saves us was purchased with the suffering of those who had no choice. The hands that heal us were trained on bodies that were considered less than human. To acknowledge this is not to reject modern medicine. It is to demand that it be better. It is to demand that it be just. It is to recognize that the fight for human dignity is at the very heart of the quest for healing. We must remember Anarcha. We must remember Betsy. We must remember Lucy. We must remember Fed. We must remember Onesimus. And we must remember the thousands of others whose names we will never know. Their bodies were the unwilling foundation of a science that promised to save humanity. But first, it had to sacrifice theirs. Forgetting is a second death. Remembering is an act of justice. By watching this, you have become a witness to their story. Subscribe to Dark Chronicles to ensure these stories are never erased. Be a part of the community that demands we never look away.